Hey, yo, Pro Wrestling Podcast listeners, help us out and click subscribe to show your support. While you're at it, if you're on YouTube, can you do me a favor? Enable notifications so they let you know exactly when we have a new episode every single time. While you're at it, if you're sick and tired of dropping $60 to $100 every time the newest, latest, greatest wrestling video game comes out, stop immediately. Go to Wrestler Unstoppable, available exclusively through Facebook. Create your wrestler, sign contracts, get involved in storylines, headline pay-per-views, even build your own corporation, all included in Wrestler Unstoppable, available now to all Facebook users totally free. If you want to become a member of the Pro Wrestling Podcast family, you want your name in the shoutouts like my buddies Harold in St. Louis and Mike in Lansdale, then check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/Pro Wrestling Podcast and sign up today. Don't forget, Loyalty Rewards Program. Any $15 a month contributors get to co-host an episode of our live shows with myself. And our $7.50 a month contributors, you get entered into a drawing to also co-host an episode of one of our live shows. Everybody who is new to the Pro Wrestling Podcast, make sure you shoot over to the ProWrestling.com homepage where you can preview all the topics coming to the Pro Wrestling Podcast ahead of one of our shows so you can come up with questions you want to ask. And hey, if it's a live show, use the chat function in whatever streaming service that you use. But if not, and you want to shoot us some questions for a future episode, call us at the Pro Wrestling Sound Off line, 267-642-1160. Give us your questions, your comments, your concerns, anything you want to talk about. Tell us your name so we can give you credit for the questions, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. It is a talk-to-text service. You talk, it texts it to us, and we get to see what it is that you wanted to hear about on our episodes. Tonight, we have several things we're going to talk about, starting off with the reaction to the Royal Rumble. We're going to get into that in more detail. Huge news about WWE superstars and other company superstars leaving in the near future. And then we've got a few other tidbits to get to for today's episode. So, first off, the Royal Rumble, I'm just going to say this. I thought the Women's Royal Rumble was easily the better of the two. It was a much more interesting match with some of the appearances by NXT superstars, people who I didn't think WWE would feel were ready yet, like Casey Catanzaro. Happy to see her make it. I don't know how I missed the news that Ricochet and Tessa Blanchard had broken up, and somehow Ricochet and Casey Catanzaro, the girl from American Ninja Warrior, somehow they got together. I totally missed that in the news, but if you get to, check out WWE.com where they have some behind-the-scenes exclusive footage of Ricochet reacting to Casey's debut in the Royal Rumble. He was in tears. He was so proud of her. What a cool moment. But as far as the card itself, it's a very strange situation when you look at the pay-per-view and you think, you know, a lot of the matches were relatively solid. I enjoyed the Bryan AJ Styles match. Thought the ending could have been a little better. Don't know why they're putting Eric Rowan into that scenario. There's a rumor out there that they may put back the whole Wyatt family with Daniel-Bryan. I hate that idea. I can't emphasize that enough, but there's some rumblings about that. I know that Bray Wyatt put up a picture of the old clique getting back together on his Twitter account the other day. Who knows what they're doing with Bray Wyatt other than a few house shows. But that match was actually pretty solid until the end. I thought the Brock Lesnar-Finn Balor match went way too short, even though what they did do, what they lack in quantity, they did give in quality. Little surprised at how hokey the ending to that match was as well. It's very strange when you think about the fact that you got these people who are creating these matches, and some of them sound great on paper. And some of the delivery is fantastic at the start of a match. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it's just not good. And that's kind of the way I felt about the Brock Lesnar-Finn Balor match. All the matches, the rest of the matches on the card, you know, the Becky-Lynch match was solid. Ronda-Rousey, solid. I think Rousey, despite how amazing she may be as an athlete, still a little rough around the edges with her execution of some of her moves. To be perfectly honest with you, I thought her match with Bayley on Raw was better than the match at the Royal Rumble, if I'm being completely open. But I thought those matches were solid. I thought that the tag team match was exactly what we expected it to be. The Miz and Shane McMahon walking out as the new tag team champions, also what we expected. No surprises there. There really weren't no surprises throughout the entire show. And when I say that, with the exception of Jeff Jarrett being the number 2 entrant in the Royal Rumble, which I loved, outside of that, no real surprises in the Royal Rumble for the men's side of things. Little flat. This is the time of year everybody looks forward to, like, who are the mystery people going to be? And with All Elite Wrestling out there looking to sign talent, bring people in, you would think this would be a really good time at Royal Rumble season for WWE to swoop in, grab some guys, and offer them some more substantial signing money to go with WWE and give them an opportunity to appear at the Rumble. And instead, we got almost nothing shocking. I know some people were surprised to see Nia Jax appear at the end. I don't care. I didn't like that. The whole reason Nia Jax was put into the Royal Rumble to begin with is because WWE is starting to flirt with this whole intergender match thing. I hate that idea. No offense to people who want, like, equality in sports. I'm cool with that. But I don't want to see a man beating up a woman, especially in this Me Too era that we live in. Like, we should not be glorifying men hitting women or women hitting men, or for that matter. People then say, oh, how about anybody hitting anybody? I get that. That's competition. One sends the wrong message. Just my opinion. You don't have to agree with me. I've seen Joey Ryan matches that I thought were great intergender. I've seen a lot on Lucha Underground I thought looked great. But that doesn't mean I want that to be a more regular thing. WWE is a much bigger platform. Some places like Lucha Underground, you have to do some of those silly things to really bring in an audience. And some of the people they've used, Ivelisse, Sexy Star, some of those talents have been really good at it. But that's the exception, should not be the norm. And I know Nia Jax is like an exception as well. An amazingly talented young lady who's got obviously so much going for her. And if anybody could pull it off right now, it would be her. But I would much rather WWE focus her, and even if they want to include Tamina in that scenario, they should be like the equivalent of like the Big Show when it comes to female wrestling. They're enormous talents. They're big. They're physical. They're all the force and power. And, they run over all the underdogs and they end up losing anyways. That's kind of what the Big Show does. I'm okay with that, but I don't really want to see Nia Jax in the ring with Dean Ambrose. I really don't. That brings me to the big topic of discussion tonight, Dean Ambrose. Dean Ambrose, it was announced by WWE. There was rumors floating around from Sunday night on that Dean Ambrose has told WWE that he will not be renewing his contract with them, which runs out in April. He was offered a 7-figure, 5-year deal, over $1 million a year guaranteed, and he turned it down. It's not about the money with him. The guy's relatively wealthy. He lives a very low-key profile life. He's not a big spender. He's made a ton of money with WWE so far. And now it's not about the money for him. He does not like the way his character has been portrayed on television. Let's be honest. These vignettes with him in the back, in the staging area with trash can fires and broken down cars and baseball bats, that's very 1992. You know what I mean? It's old school, like back when WWE was more cartoonish. I don't need to see that. Dean Ambrose, when he was the lunatic fringe, that was a character people could wrap their mind around. It was cool. It was fresh. It was edgy. He was on the brink of being a bad guy, but he was a good guy. He really blurred the lines. People like that. People are not very much behind his current run. And I think Dean knows that. And he's also very good friends with Chris Jericho. He's good friends with Cody Rhodes. And All Elite Wrestling debuting in May, it could be a very good opportunity for him to show up at Double or Nothing. Now, his contract runs out in April. I don't know if there's a 90-day no-compete clause if his contract runs out. I know there is if you are granted a release, but not necessarily if your contract runs out. It's possible. We'll have to wait and see. But I really hope that if he is going to definitely leave WWE, that he gets some kind of substantial opportunity, to, hopefully All Elite Wrestling, so help that brand grow quickly. But if not, there's many other options, New Japan, Ring of Honor, Impact, Lucha. There's a lot of places he can go where his services would be much more appreciated than they probably were in WWE for about the last year. Before that, I thought he had a good run. I don't see where he has any complaints up until his return from injury this year. And even at the beginning of the return from injury, he looked like the dead-on, laser-focused, serious character, which is not comedic. Then, Roman leaves with leukemia. They do the angle with Seth-Rollins, and that's where it starts to get weird. Instead of showing his talents in the ring, instead, he's doing these backstage interviews and things that they don't help. And they didn't really showcase him at all when he had the Intercontinental Championship. They didn't strategically use him, and I think it caught up with them. And now, with options out there and the wrestling world abuzz with how much you can do on the indie scene and in smaller companies, he doesn't have to stay with WWE, especially if he doesn't want to make it all about the money. Now, I understand Renee Young is staying with WWE. She put a picture of Dean up on her Twitter feed, and she's so proud of her husband and everything. But apparently she's on good terms, and it sounds like from the release from WWE that they're on good terms with him, and they hope to see him return to WWE at some point. If anything else, maybe All Elite Wrestling, taking a few talents here and there, will create a moment that we haven't had since WCW days, where people go from brand to brand, and then you get that exciting pop when they show up and you're not expecting it. Right now, it's like you're either in WWE or you're not. Most people are, and that's where you don't get that same excitement, like who's jumping where and what company is this one going to go with or that one going to go with. Even with Kenny Omega, like there were very few people really believe that there has ever been a chance he was really going to go to WWE. I'll be honest with you, I was one of the people who thought he could because I thought WWE could make him an offer he couldn't refuse, but apparently they didn't. So we'll have to wait and see what turns out for Dean Ambrose, but it is interesting to note that this is coming on the heels of the announcement of All Elite Wrestling. Another one is also leaving. Hideo Itami from 205 Live came into WWE with a lot of fanfare, formerly Kenta in Pro Wrestling Noah, made a name for himself in Japan. Apparently he wants to go back to Japan, possibly do some other things. He's asked for and will soon be granted his release. Now he'll have a 90-day no-compete clause, so I don't anticipate him showing up anywhere right away, but they really botched him from the minute they brought him to the company. He had that one little spot where they let him into the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal at WrestleMania. Then he kept having injuries and more injuries, and 205 Live and the NXT stuff was never very good. Every time there was somebody it looked like he could have a great match with, they moved him to the main roster, and then he had nobody to wrestle. His feud with Finn Balor and people like that was okay, but he just really never got an opportunity to really showcase what he can do. Now, hopefully he'll go back over to Japan and be as big or bigger a star than he ever was before, much in the way that Neville has. I would not be opposed to seeing him go to All Elite Wrestling and wrestle Neville. They two of them can put on a clinic when it comes to wrestling talent, and I get the feeling that All Elite Wrestling is going to let people actually wrestle, hence the word wrestling, something WWE does not let a lot of their talents do. So we'll have to see how that pans out. But seeing stars leaving, we know we've talked recently on other episodes about Dolph Ziggler's contract coming due on January 31st. He was kind of a surprise entrant in the Royal Rumble, but I kind of expected if he's leaving and they have dates left on his contract, they probably would want to use as many of those as they could. So putting him in the ring does not surprise me even a little bit. But outside of that, there's just not a lot that WWE's doing, it seems. I know they had the report that they were like offering double the money and stuff like that to certain people, but they're not doing a lot to keep some of these guys, and these are marquee names. Let's face it, All Elite Wrestling with Cody, Christopher Daniels, and Kenny Omega sounds good, but having Chris Jericho, Dolph Ziggler, and Dean Ambrose join that group makes it legit. I mean, you're talking about having maybe 6 to 10 really legitimate stars on that program that the real diehard wrestling fans like you and myself, we like to see. Let's face it, a lot of us are huge Neville fans. Some of us would put Neville on the level with Finn Balor, with people like Bobby Lashley, with people like Roman Reigns, because we respect Neville's work so much. So depending on where you are in your fandom for the wrestling universe, you may be really, really excited with the All Elite roster, even if WWE would get the impression that they're not as big as stars. I know Chris Jericho put out a tweet on his Twitter feed the other day, almost mocking New Japan, WWE, and Ring of Honor, saying that everybody's clamoring, worrying about whose talent they're taking. There's only about 8 guys that they'd even be interested in. So, kind of get over yourselves. But you can't convince me that if certain talents were made available, they wouldn't jump all over it. They'd be insane not to. But we'll have to keep our eye on how all these people theoretically leaving WWE or New Japan. And New Japan's losing 2 more, Beretta and Chuck E.T. Beretta used to be Trent Beretta in WWE back in like 2004 to like 2013. Didn't really make much of a mark there. Did do a great deal of work on the indies in New Japan. He and Chuck E.T. have really established themselves as a great tag team. 4 times they've held the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team Championship. I suspect they'll go to All Elite Wrestling. Let's face it, that company's going to need tag teams, people who other than SoCal Uncensored and the Young Bucks, and these guys are similar body shape and size. That's important because you got to be able to have chemistry with them. So I expect them to end up there as well. But, it's almost scary how many people are really contemplating leaving WWE or New Japan Pro Wrestling, two of the biggest companies in the world. 2 stars coming back to WWE, not as on-screen talents. We talked previous episode about Abyss and Sanjay Dutt. Well, now we've got Shawn Daivari and Hurricane Helms also returning to WWE in backstage roles, producing creative stuff. I think it's a good deal. Bring in as many talents as you can. Look, they're expanding NXT UK, potentially NXT Germany, performance centers in multiple locations. You're going to need people who know the WWE way, and who better than people who've been in the organization significantly long periods of time. They understand the process. So we'll have to keep our eye on that. I think it's a good thing for WWE, though, to snatch up as many of these people as they can. Other topics for today. 1, the plans for the Ronda Rousey Becky Lynch match at Mania. Apparently, this match has gone through so many changes over the last year, and some of it on purpose, some of it not so much. I know there was a period of time where they were talking about flipping Natalya to being a heel to take on Ronda Rousey instead of Charlotte Flair. The original plan was Charlotte and Rousey. Then Charlotte and Lynch were so hot, they were thinking about doing that. They were going to do Rousey and Natalya. Then Jim the Anvil Neidhart passed away. And then you get the whole thing where, we can't flip Natalya heel now. Her dad just died. So that kind of went by the wayside. Then you have Nia Jax giving a concussion to Becky Lynch right before Survivor Series. That destroyed the Becky Lynch match with Ronda Rousey. I think right up until that point, the plan was Becky Lynch and Ronda Rousey at Survivor Series, Charlotte and Rousey at Mania. But thanks to Nia Jax, you had to change plans, change course, and people love Becky Lynch now. I believe it should be Ronda Rousey versus Becky Lynch, period, main event of WrestleMania. I also believe that WWE is too stupid to realize that, and Vince always thinks he's smarter than the fans, and they are going to purposely put Charlotte Flair in the match as well and make it a triple threat for the Women's Championship, and I think that is an incredibly terrible idea because it's to the point now where people are starting to treat Charlotte like Roman Reigns. Like, hey, you're forcing this person down our throat. It's not who we want. This isn't what we want to do. Please don't do this, and WWE does not seem to be listening at all. That's a problem. You have an opportunity here. First time the women ever main event WrestleMania, and it should be a huge monster attraction. And instead, you run the risk of hurting the attraction when you put that extra element of Charlotte Flair in there that, I hate to say it, I love Charlotte's work. I think she might be the best female wrestler in the entire world of wrestling, but that doesn't mean she should automatically have to be the first women's main event at WrestleMania. It doesn't have to be that way. WWE, apparently they feel otherwise. Talk about the strange case of Lars Sullivan. This is still an ongoing saga. Even his own therapist put up a statement, his publicist put up a statement about how he went missing and they had just been in touch with him finally and he's in a good place and all these things. But it's clear his push halted. It's going to end up being Drew McIntyre and John Cena at WrestleMania instead because you've got this situation where McIntyre supposedly injured Cena. That's what Lars Sullivan was supposed to do. He was supposed to injure John Cena, keep him out of the Royal Rumble because Cena's filming a movie, and then go on to defeat John Cena at WrestleMania in his debut Mania match. That's not going to happen if the guy can't keep his head straight long enough to get in the ring. Now, I'm not trying to pick on people who have anxiety disorders. Lord knows I've had enough anxiety in my life. What I'm saying is there are some people who just aren't cut out for this main spotlight. He did well in NXT, but the anxiety of coming to the main roster and being in such a high-profile program clearly weighed on this man. So maybe he should be one of those people that Triple H was talking about a few weeks ago who's a lifer of NXT, and that's okay because NXT is a phenomenal, phenomenal brand. The Undertaker's role at WrestleMania, apparently there isn't one. As of right now, if you look at any of the major reporting outlets, whether it's Ryan Satin or Brian Alvarez, or you look at F4W Online or any of the other websites, Wrestling Inc., eWrestling News, WrestleZone, they all are saying the same thing. The Undertaker is right now not a part of the creative plan for WrestleMania. The top of the card has been set. Now, personally, I never would have planned a Lars Sullivan-John Cena match to begin with. If The Undertaker truly is leaving, and this is the end of it, he needed to pass the torch, and he should have passed the torch to either Aleister Black or Lars Sullivan. That would have been the way to do it. But now they're saying he's not even a part of the program. We haven't had a WrestleMania without The Undertaker since he supposedly died at the Royal Rumble at the hands of Yokozuna way back in the 90s. This is weird. It's strange new territory for WWE to have a WrestleMania without The Undertaker. I think he needed to come back for one last Mania because his last match was that horrible crap show in the Crown Jewel main event against the reformed DX. That is not the way you want to remember The Undertaker for his last ever match, but it sounds like that may actually be the case, which I'm not a fan of. I think the wrestling fans who stuck with him through the streak and everything else, they really deserve something better than that, but unfortunately not you nor I get a say in the matter. So WWE, please don't mess this up. This guy deserves to go out like a champ, and unfortunately right now it doesn't look like he's going to get to. That's all the time we have for this episode. Check back with us next episode. We'll run down all the latest wrestling news and rumors. Special thanks as always go out to bensound.com and purpleplanet.com. They produce all the music and sound effects that we use in our shows. Today's podcast was sponsored in part by Beazle Games. Bringing a new friend to family game night is easy with sketchy people. Showcase your artistic side in this game from Beazle Games by going to frowrestling.com and clicking the icon in the middle of the screen. And to alleyrepair.com. Contact Alley Repair today for servicing of all your classic skee-ball, pinball, and arcade game needs. If you're looking for your next career move, maybe you want to consider college, university life, you just need some formal training for your next career decision, go to our sister website, www.frolifeplanning.com for all of your higher education needs. As Fro Life Educational Planning is for today, for tomorrow, and for life with Fro Life. I'm Fred Froelich, better known as Mr. Fro. I want to thank you for taking a few moments with us today. And if you're looking for more wrestling news and rumors, go to www.tsj101sports.com for their latest articles on the world of professional wrestling, or go to my blog at InFro's Corner, located at frowrestling.com. Click the icon at the top of the page for my latest pieces. Until next time, take care, everybody, and have a great night.